Let us start now part 4 Kleshas from Heartfulness Magazine Collector's Edition of December 2019 on Yogic Psychology. Please do visit www.heartfulnessmagazine.com. In this series of articles, Revered Daji explains the fundamental basis of yogic psychology, which is the ancient science of Raja Yoga, discussed in texts like Ashtavakra Gita, the Sangit Vasishtha, and which was first codified by Patanjali in his Yoga Sutras. Daji enlightens us on this understanding of the human mind and the various common mental tendencies and imbalances, and he also gives us solutions to create mental well-being through heartfulness practices. Here we commence with Kleshas. Before this, we covered Introduction to Yogic Psychology and Vrittis. If you have not listened to the earlier parts, it is recommended to please do listen to it from playlist before proceeding further. Revered Kamlesh Patel, also known as Daji, he is the current heartfulness guide. He offers a practical, experiential approach to the evolution of consciousness that is simple, easy to follow, and available to people of all ages and walks of life. Daji is also a prolific speaker and writer, and his two books, The Heartfulness Way and Designing Destiny, are both #1 bestsellers. The contents in this entire series on yogic psychology are Introduction, Vrittis, Kleshas, Vikshepas, Vignas, and Solutions. Let us first recap and remind ourselves of the fundamental principle of yogic psychology, that our original inner mental state is one of purity, stillness, and samadhi, which is also the ultimate goal of yoga. It is the pure state of non-vibration that lies at the center of our existence. It is the healthy state of balance and contentment from which all the heart-based qualities like love, compassion, and generosity emanate, because it is a state of oneness. Yogic psychology has never been based on pathology, but on attaining that pure state, which is the baseline for mental well-being. This state of non-vibration, no-thingness, or the original void, is present in every fiber of our being. Physicists describe it as being present at the center of every atom. In yoga, that baseline is our reference point, the eye at the center of the tornado, the ultimate state of the vibration-free stillness. It was our starting point and will eventually also be ending point of our existence. If we are able to master that state while we are alive, we transcend the need for the cycle of birth and death known as reincarnation, as we go beyond consciousness itself to what is beyond consciousness. In his Yoga Sutras, Patanjali has codified the various modifications and vibrations that arise in our field of consciousness. All those things that take us away from the balance and stillness at our center, the soul. The process of refining these modifications is what yoga is all about. Up till now, we have explored the basic type of thought patterns or tendencies known as 5 vrittis, which can either be colored or uncolored, that is impure or pure. The process of coloring becomes cumulative, however, that leads to negative mental states that eventually become afflictions or obstacles to well-being and further evolution. These 5 basic afflictions are known as the Kleshas in both Hinduism and Buddhism, those negative mental states that cloud the mind and cause suffering and the conditions for suffering to arise. They lead to mental complications and imbalance, preventing us from being centered and contented. Here is what Patanjali has to say about the Kleshas. In Sutra 2.2, he says, Samadhi bhavana artha klesha tanu karana artha shacha. If your practice is aligned with your goal of Samadhi, the obstacles along your path, that is Kleshas, will disappear and ultimately you will reach your goal. In Sutra 2.3, Avidya Asmita Raga Dvesha Abhinivesha Klesha. These obstacles are Avidya, that is ignorance or lack of awareness; Asmita, that is egotism, identification with the impermanent body; Raga, that is likes and pleasures; Advesha, dislikes, pain, etc.; Abhinivesha, clinging to life and fear of death. In Sutra 2.2, Te prati prasava biheya sukshmaha. When sanskaras are removed, these afflictions can be resolved back to their origin. In Sutra 2.1, Dhyana heta tad vrittaya. Through meditation, the outer expression of the afflictions disappear. In Sutra 2.12, Klesha Mula Karma Ashayo Drishta Adrishta Janma Vedaniya. Whether they are fulfilled in the present or the future, karmic experiences have their roots in these 5 afflictions. In Sutra 2.30, Sati Mule Tada Vipako Jati Ayur Bhogaha. While the roots, the sanskaras, remain, karma manifests in the rebirth from the form of station in life, lifespan, and types of experiences. In Sutra 2.4, 14, Te hlada paritapa falaha punya apunya hetutva. Virtue brings pleasure, vice brings pain. Patanjali starts his discussion on kleshas with the importance of having a goal. But not everyone starts a meditation practice with a goal of samadhi or complete oneness with the original balanced state. So, another way of looking at this is, in which direction are we traveling? Along the way to the ultimate goal, there may be many other goals like peace of mind, liberation, developed mind. The important thing is to be traveling in the right direction, centripetally towards simplicity rather than centrifugally towards complexity. Patanjali goes on to define the 5 kleshas or mental afflictions and then establish their relationship with the formation of samskaras. Samskara theory is a critical aspect of yogic science, that impressions or modifications in the field of consciousness result in complex energy patterns being formed, which harden and create samskars over time and through repetition. It is like the process of track being formed through a forest. First, 1 or 2 people walk along a particular path, flattening the grass or undergrowth. Others follow the same path until eventually there is clearly marked track which is regularly used and may eventually become a thoroughfare and even a road. What started as a temporarily flattened grass over time becomes a hardened road. Similarly, an initial behavior or response, for example, fear of the dark, can be reinforced over and over again in a person until it eventually becomes a mental tendency or even a phobia. It has hardened into samskar. Fear of dark relates to a few of the kleshas. First, the fear of death and clinging to life. Second, dislike or pain. Third, egotism, because of identification with the body and concern for the body. And finally, the ignorance or lack of awareness at the base of the fear. The mind has become colored because of past experience, so that the default response in that person is that being in the dark is inherently dangerous. It is very difficult to completely get rid of kleshas, as many of the sanskars behind them are formed subconsciously through emotional responses, in this particular example, fear. The associated pathways in the nervous system for such responses are not through the cortex of the brain, but directly from the heart to the mammalian brain or amygdala. They are not responses that involve cognitive thinking, but instead subconscious processes that affect us without our conscious control. They can potentially surface at any time. As a result, our need for vigilance is never ending. It is also why the first two limbs of the Ashtanga Yoga, Yama and Niyam, are so important for our self-development. Heartfulness cleaning is an effective method for removing sanskar that is independent of the neural pathways and parts of the brain involved in their formation. As it was developed in the 1940s by Ramachandra of Shahjahanpur, Babuji Maharaj, as a way to purify the field of consciousness of sanskar. It was not available as a technique when Patanjali wrote the Yoga Sutras. Cleaning is one of the most potent tools that yogic psychology offers the world because it works by cleaning the complexities and impurities in the field of consciousness at the vibrational level rather than trying to change behavioral patterns, thought processes, or nervous systems. When we look at how the human system works, generally everything starts from the causal body or soul, that is the cause of our existence, which then affects the subtle bodies at the level of heart-mind, and then this permeates outwards to affect the systems of the physical body, that is the hormonal, nervous and circulatory system. Our human system is actually like a series of layers from the center outwards, defined in heartfulness by the 5 koshas, the 3 bodies and the 23 rings. By working at the subtlest vibrational level of the subtle bodies, cleaning does not rely on thinking and analysis to remove the roots of afflictions. Here, these 23 rings of heartfulness yoga are shown here. The outermost in the green ink are shown of the 5 circles of heart region which are of material existence. Inner ones in the orange color or amber color are of 11 circles of mind region. These are for our subtle existence. So 5, 11 and now there are 7 rings of splendor in the yellow color which are of the causal existence of central region, and then there is a center. Some spiritual teachers like Osho have spoken of removing kleshas through pratiprasava as a process of reabsorbing the behavioral effect back to the cause by relieving those past experiences that caused the afflictions. He also called this process involution. The relieving involves letting the past surface without judgment, without liking or disliking, being a witness to the process without getting entangled or affected by anything that surfaces. But it can take forever to reabsorb sanskaric tendencies back to their source, as the roots may have started many lifetimes ago and be buried very deep in the subconscious mind. And if we are not careful, sometimes reliving the experience may cause the reaction in us, so it can actually intensify the samskara rather than removing it. Heartfulness cleaning is much simpler. It does not require reliving. It is the next generation of yogic practices. In fact, all the samskaras of one lifetime can easily be removed in one session with a heartfulness trainer without the person even being aware. Once the root cause, the sanskar, is removed, then it is definitely up to us to refine the associated outer behavioral pattern. That is why all great spiritual teachers have given guidelines for living. For example, the Vedas, Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, Patanjali's Yama and Niyam, Buddha's Eightfold Path and 10 Commandments of Jesus, the golden rules found in the Quran and the Talmud, and the 10 maxims of Ramachandra. For this, we need self-study and self-awareness as discussed below. Psychologists and psychiatrists also work to change mental and behavioral patterns resulting from the past in order to cure their patients of mental afflictions and bring about well-being. They do so through behavioral modification therapies like Gestalt, transactional analysis, integral therapy, primal therapy, psychoanalysis, hypnosis, etc. But again, without the removal of the root sanskaras, it will always be a longer and more tedious process. Patanjali tells us that the outer expression of the kleshas will disappear through meditation. In meditation, we learn to identify with the source of our existence, the soul, rather than with the body or the mind. So, in that sense, meditation does help to remove some of these afflictions because we do not give our afflictions the power of our attention. The more we ignore them and focus on higher purpose, the more chance they will have to dissolve. Also, in Patanjali's time, yogis meditated for hours and hours every day, and so it may have been possible to remove afflictions through meditation alone, although I doubt it would have worked for most people. Maybe for someone like the Buddha, but how many people had his determination and fortitude for self-study and tapasya? In any case, how many of us have time for hours and hours of meditation every day? Thankfully, the practices of yoga have evolved in modern times, and heartfulness cleaning can remove the root cause, so there is less need to sit in meditation for hours and hours every day. For all of us, the mind is affected by the accumulation of the past, of samskaric patterns and responses that are hardwired into our central nervous system, creating channels that define our thoughts and actions, creating the blueprint for our destiny. Neuroscience also recognizes this. Whatever we have done in the past has formed the habits that determine what we do today, and what we do today determines the future. Even though thought and every action is self-perpetuating until we remove the root cause. The seeds of our karma are our sanskars, and they carry over from one life to the next by impressing upon the subtle body around the soul. They create vibrational patterns, and so at the time of conception for the next birth, these vibrational patterns draws us to certain parents, culture, life experiences. I have written about this at length in Designing Destiny. And as Patanjali says, virtue brings pleasure and vice brings pain. This is natural cause and effect. To evolve, however, we don't want to be attached to either pleasure or pain, virtue or vice, or any of the other dualities of earthly existence, as they are always two sides of the one coin. Ultimately, where there is a pleasure, there is a pain, just as where there is the brightest light, there is the darkest shadow. Duality is part of the physical world, and in yoga, we are transcending our temporal physical nature towards our eternal nature. And while we remain rooted in the emotional baggage from the past, this is not possible. Our mind remains an accumulation of the past. It is worth reflecting on the relationship between sanskaras and kleshas. Here is something to think about. The kleshas are an outer expression of the sanskaras that accumulate in our field of consciousness, and yet kleshas also lead to the formation of sanskaras. So what is needed from our side to cut this cyclical loop? Let us see. First type of klesha, that is avidya, lack of awareness. In yoga, avidya is crucial to understanding mental well-being. It is considered to be the core affliction, that is the foundation for all other afflictions. It is the mental defect where one is unaware of what is most vital and essential. Patanjali says in Sutra 2.4, Avidya kshetram uttaresham prasupta tanu vichinna udaranam. Only through avidya are the other afflictions able to operate, whether they are latent, budding, fully expressed or overwhelming. What is avidya? It is usually translated into English as ignorance or lack of knowledge. But here Patanjali is not writing about the knowledge acquired by learning facts or even through past experience. Actually, accumulating knowledge is only going to complicate rather than purify consciousness. Real Vidya comes with purity, with the removal of beliefs, prejudices and clutter in the mind. A better translation of avidya is lack of awareness, as Vidya is possible when there is a pure canvas of consciousness upon which awareness and perception can work as a witness. In essence, anything that takes us away from centeredness is avidya, and anything that aids us in moving towards our center is vidya. Avidya is the lack of awareness resulting from a limited consciousness. So, the next question is, what limits consciousness? The coverings of samskaras that cloud the purity of our consciousness. And there are two things that are largely responsible for this process of accumulating samskaras: desire and ego. Desire comes from our mental process of judging things according to what we like and want, or dislike and don't want. Desire also arises due to feeling of lack of things, abhava, and due to overwhelming impressions, that is prabhava, that things create in us. Desire decenters us from our main nature, that is svabhava. Ego is the function of our mind that identifies with and attaches to possession. When the ego is desireless, that is, it has no likes and dislikes, when it is only identified with the higher self, then its purpose is to take us to our ultimate destination. And it is one of our greatest instruments in fulfilling our duty or dharma. But most of us identify with other things: our body, mind, work, children, spouse, culture, country, religion, reputation, and even with material things like our house and car. It is by becoming conscious of desires and ego and the role they play in creating mental afflictions that we start to understand mental well-being. In a simplistic way, we can say that during our spiritual journey, the yatra, we learn to master desires in the heart region and master the ego associated with the mind region. In fact, the play of desires can create drama even if you are traversing through the mind region, and likewise the ego can display many of its thorny sides while we are in the heart region. So the process of going from avidya to vidya is a process of divesting all identifications, likes and dislikes in order to return back to simplicity. Avidya can manifest at any time, even in experienced yogis, because of cultural beliefs and lifestyle. For example, even the wisest and most open-minded of us may still hold beliefs because of our backgrounds and cultural experiences at an early age. So it helps to be vigilant about Patanjali's first two limbs of Ashtanga Yoga, Yama and Niyam, especially the fourth Niyam of Swadhyaya of self-study. Self-study makes us aware of our intentions and actions, shining a light on our thoughts and feelings. We refine our character by bringing those habits and tendencies to light that limit our personalities. Rather than being judgmental, Swadhyaya is done with self-compassion and used for continuous improvement. Heartfulness facilitates self-study in a number of ways. Through meditation, we learn to become the witness of our inner universe. A few minutes of daily meditation makes us more and more meditative, the effect of which percolates into our mundane day-to-day activities. Whenever any inner stir arises, we are quickly aware and can do what is necessary to remove it through the process of cleaning. We don't need to be entangled in the emotions of what we see in ourselves. We are encouraged to write a journal so as to sensitize ourselves to our inner world. Through this practice, we become a better and better witness of self-acceptance and self-compassion, and we are able to change more easily. Through prayerful connection with our inner self, we listen to our heart and honor its higher wisdom. Through the practice of constant remembrance, we are constantly connected with the wisdom of higher self. This provides an inner canvas of consciousness that remains immune to samskar formation. In Sutra 2.5, Anitya asuchi dukkha anatmasu nitya stuchi sukha atmayatir avidya. Avidya is mistaking the temporal to be eternal, the impure to be pure, the painful to be pleasurable, and the lower self to be the higher self, the soul or Atman. Rather than identifying so heavily with the peripheral transitory aspects of life, the body, other ego identifications, behavioral patterns, and emotional afflictions, we learn to identify with the inner aspect of our existence, the eternal soul, the source of all joy and pure consciousness. Awareness allows us to see reality. The practices of heartfulness are designed to do exactly that, to uncover our original state of purity and balance. This is why yoga has never looked at psychology from perspective of pathology, because it has always focused on the positive approach of attaining the healthiest mental state possible for human beings, that of samadhi. That is our focus in yoga. The dualities of existence. The first of the kleshas, avidya, which we explored in the last article, is the basis of the other four afflictions, asmita, raga, dvesha and abhinivesha. It is the ignorance resulting from a limited consciousness that creates lack of awareness, and the two things that are largely responsible for restricting consciousness and leading to mental affliction are desire and ego. It is by becoming conscious of desires and ego and the role they play in creating mental afflictions that we start to understand mental well-being. In a simplistic way, we can say that during our spiritual journey, the yatra, we learn to master desires in the heart region and master the ego associated with the mind region. In fact, the play of desires can create drama even if you are traversing through the mind region, and likewise the ego can display many of its thorny sides while we are in the heart region. The process of going from avidya to vidya is the process of divesting all the likes and dislikes related to desire, as well as the various identifications of the ego, in order to return back to simplicity. In heartfulness, this process of moving from mental complexity and affliction to mental purity and health is done through the journey of 13 chakras from the outer periphery of being to the center of being. We receive so much help in the process from our spiritual guide and his yogic transmission that keeps our attention focused towards the center. Even still, we have to be vigilant to refine our outer behavior. We bring those habits and tendencies to light that limit our personality and work on consciously removing them. The remaining four kleshas are manifested through these tendencies that are the result of desire and ego and are best considered together. So second we will see asmita and egoism. The second klesh is asmita, egoism or mindness. Patanjali says in Sutra 2.6, Driga darshana saktyor ekatmata iva asmita. Egoism is the identification of the seer with the instrument of seeing. In Patanjali's view, egoism stems from identification with the wrong thing. What is the seer? The seer is the highest self, the soul, the eternal, infinite aspect of our being, our center. What is the instrument of seeing? The subtle body or heart mind. So, our mental problems arise when our ego starts identifying with the instrument of seeing, consciousness, the intellect, the thinking mind, and the sense organs. They are only instruments, and when we identify with these instruments, it results in misdirected ego. It is because of this that we start developing likes and dislikes, attractions and aversions, and the whole process of forming sanskar begins. In a sense, we can say that when we do not acknowledge the soul and its central role in our lives, we are doomed to mental affliction and ill health. Per contra, when we constantly refer to the soul throughout our daily activities, we remain in connection with our center, and that is the recipe for holistic integrated mental health. In heartfulness, this ability to interiorize is called constant remembrance, also known as retaining the meditative state or meditating with open eyes. Constant remembrance emerges out of meditation. Once we learn to retain and enhance the meditative state we experienced in the morning meditation throughout the rest of the day. In other words, meditation is the mother of constant remembrance. Hence, the importance of meditating every morning. As an aside, there is something relevant to say about the effect of identification on the divergence of science and spirituality, at least by the 1600s. Remember the famous pronouncement of René Descartes, ego cogito ergo sum, meaning I think therefore I am. The reality is the opposite. Thinking is due to my existence. What is it that grants the ability of the mind to think? Descartes reasoned that he could be certain he existed because he thought, whereas he perceived his body through the use of the senses, which were often unreliable. He concluded that the only true knowledge came from thinking. He also concluded that thinking power came from his essence. Descartes defined thought as what happens in me such that I am immediately conscious of it, insofar as I am conscious of it. Thinking for Descartes was every activity of which he was immediately conscious. As a result, Descartes discarded perception as unreliable and accepted only deduction as the true method. This became the basis of the scientific method, which still underpins science today and does not accept direct perception as a way of obtaining true knowledge. Why were the senses unreliable for Descartes? Because of the coloring in the field of consciousness due to the formation of sanskar, effectively the kleshas. But it is really possible for thinking to be correct when the field of consciousness is impure. It becomes difficult for intellect to arrive at the correct inference with impurities spoiling consciousness. As scientists have found during 20th century, the outcome of any scientific experiment is dependent on the mind of the observer. The importance of purity of consciousness is as important in the field of science as in the field of direct perception. When we identify our very existence with thinking, it is identified only with the instrument of seeing instead of the seer, and that becomes a source of egoism. This is the current plight of humanity. Per contra, true yogis first purify their consciousness through practice before even attempting to understand the world. They identify with the soul. That way, the true witness, the soul, can use the instruments of consciousness, intellect, thinking, and the senses, as well as superconscious perception, to arrive at the best possible answer. The answer can then also be verified by the scientific method whenever there are measurable variables. But not everything can be measured by science. Coming back to Asmita, our mental health and well-being is dependent on what we identify with. The soul is unchangeable. So when we identify with the soul, can we become angry or sad? No. But when we like or dislike, when we have attachment and aversion, then we can react positively or negatively, and then it is possible to become angry or sad. We are identifying with the instruments of seeing, not the seer, and so we feel pleasure and pain. And on top of that, we identify still more externally with family members, friends, office colleagues, and associate ourselves with them with an emotional bond. So we move farther and farther from our individual center. The third and fourth kleshas are Raga and Dvesha, which Patanjali defines as, in Sutra 2.7, Sukha Anushayi Ragaha. Attachment is that which follows from identification with pleasurable experiences. In Sutra 2.8, Dukkha Anushayi Dveshaha. Aversion is that which follows from identification with painful experiences. We become attached wherever we find pleasure, and we feel aversion wherever we find pain. If we observe our thinking process, we will find that this happens all the time with people, food, clothing, places, and principles. It can apply to anyone, anything, and any concept. I like her hairstyle, I don't like the way he speaks to me, that house is beautiful, I want one like that, etc. The current of the mind flows towards those things we like and recoils from those things we dislike. The effect of the like and dislike vibrations settles down at point C of the heart and eventually forms samskar. So here the point C is shown, which is from take one finger down from the sternum and 4 fingers to the left, which is the point B, and below point B 2 fingers down is the point C. So everything starts at point C, the strategic point or landing point for sanskar in our system. It is our reaction of likes and dislikes that create the first vibration or stir in the field of consciousness. This affects point C, and from there the energy forms an impression. To prevent point C from being affected by likes and dislikes, try to maintain a meditative state throughout the day, so that the mind is unaffected. The beautiful lotus flower floating in muddy water is a wonderful analogy. It grows in the dirtiest water, maintaining its pristine purity and beauty. When this is done, impressions will not affect the field of consciousness. This is one of the most important things we can do for our mental and spiritual health, and it highlights the importance of maintaining a meditative state throughout the day. The fifth of the kleshas is Abhinivesha, which Patanjali defines as The fifth of the kleshas is Abhinivesha, which Patanjali defines as, in Sutra 2.9, Swara Savahi Vidusha Api Tat Arudho Abhiniveshaha. Clinging to life, flowing through its own nature, can be found even among the wise. Clinging to life, the instinct for survival, is found in all living beings. It is an evolutionary imperative that defines the ecology of all species. But where does this instinct come from? In the language of yoga, these instincts are based on sanskaric patterns from the past. Instinct is the result of past experience, often from previous lives, that is stored in our field of consciousness. So, clinging to life is the instinctive result of an aversion to death that has come from experience of many past lives. We have known the pain of dying so well. This klesha is also based on the ignorance of identifying with the body instead of the soul, which is the eternal and infinite nature. Resolving these afflictions, Patanjali says in Sutra 2.10. In Sutra 2.10, Te pratiprasavaheya sukshmaha. When sanskaras are removed, these afflictions can be resolved back to their origin. In Sutra 2.11, Dhyana heyaya tad vrutteyaha. Through meditation, the outer expression of the afflictions disappear. In Sutra 2.12, Klesha Moola Karma Ashayo Drishta Adrishta Janma Vedaniya. Whether they are fulfilled in the present or the future, karmic experiences have their roots in these 5 afflictions. So, the key is to have a regular daily practice that removes sanskar. If we are able to remove the root cause of afflictions, we can hope to reach our potential of mental well-being, balance and purity. If not, we are stuck with mental complexities, patterns and tendencies life after life. It is a simple step to do the daily practice of heartfulness cleaning to remove them. Just as simple as taking a shower to clean your body. It takes but 15 to 20 minutes every evening. This practice of cleaning is one of the greatest contributions heartfulness has given to the modern world, as it is so effective in removing the root cause of desires. But it is not enough on its own. The identification of the ego cannot be cleaned and has to be refined through another process that we will take up another time. Here we now complete kleshas, and in next video we will read about vikshepas. Thank you for listening.